In the last year, I've learned that history tends to follow the one who made it. Turns out I also get followed by dopes who can't seem to make their own. Now, since that match happened, a lot of people have tried to take this from me. If Shayna Baszler, she thinks that she's different, she has an edge because she's a killer, the one who wiped out the entire division. And she even said last week that taking this from me would destroy me. Well, she's right. It would.
We're all junkies for this. As a 13-year-old kid sitting 11th row ringside for WrestleMania, Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, I knew them. If you're not a junkie for this, then you're just taking up space. You're in my way.
This most unique, most extraordinary WrestleMania, a WrestleMania too big for just one night.
Yeah, as Paul Heyman says, a WrestleMania deemed too big for one night. It means we're going to have 16 matches across this Saturday and Sunday for WrestleMania 36 of WrestleManias, and one I get a sneaky feeling might be known as the bad one. To look forward to this, we're joined by Richie McCormack and by Michael Verney of the Irish Independent. Gentlemen, good evening to both of you.
Evening, Will. Don't worry, WrestleMania 11 will still be known as the bad WrestleMania.
Yeah, well, it's got a lot to do to beat that, admittedly, as it tries to break some records. As we mentioned on last week's pods, this is the first WrestleMania ever to take place in an entirely pre-recorded format, and it won't be in front of any fans, which has thrown up all sorts of issues, including WWE, who are currently promoting a main event at the moment, which we all know won't happen, but more about that anon. I'm probably going to lose this prop of the title belt in a moment because it is currently weighing down my shoulder quite a bit.
Do you know my favorite part of the picture now at the moment is it looks like you're holding that belt in 2004, 2005, whereby they've gone about blurring all the old WWF logos, given the fact that you've got blur background on. The signature is just out of shot, so you're it's blurred, so it looks like you've actually added a WWE effect to it, which is extra authenticity, Will, and I like you for that.
And it probably means WWE don't get to sue us at the end of this podcast either. As we look forward to this weekend, Rich, we spoke about it a bit last weekend, but to me it seems absolutely mental that you end up in the circumstance they have over the last 3 weeks, where realistically, you're facing all sorts of problems which are outside of your control because of COVID-19. And they just kept adding matches, even up to this week.
Yeah, they just kept adding matches. We mentioned it last week that this thing shouldn't be happening at all. And we in the bizarre circumstance whereby I was watching earlier on an interview with Triple H, who was talking to Ariel Helwani, and basically admitted that, we have an executive admitting that a match that they're going to continue plugging right up until Friday night when they air SmackDown on Fox, they are going to change. And he says that they're going to have to come up with something theatrical to change it. They've said that they're going to make as many, cases and safeguards against coronavirus and all this in their filming of it. Like, obviously, it's all in the can. But it's just a bizarre situation that they just should have held fire on. There's two things during this whole shutdown worldwide of like big, massive events that I can't get my head around. One of them was Wimbledon. As soon as they said they were cancelling Wimbledon yesterday, that was the one where I sat back and was like, Jesus, whoa, this is actually like huge enough that something like Wimbledon with 500,000 fans through the gates for the fortnight, with all of the TV revenue that comes along with it and with all the sponsors that go along with it, and with its place in the summer, that would be cancelled outright just seems crazy to me. And I genuinely thought that Vince was that much of a prick that he wouldn't put money on the table and would actually hold off, get an agreement with a stadium later on in the summer and run, I don't know, something in July or August or maybe even into September, and have that pegged as a WrestleMania, or have some kind of stadium show. Now, there still might be something up his sleeve, but the fact that they're just throwing away a WrestleMania, adding more matches to it and having over 2 nights in front of nobody, it just seems mad to me. Absolutely mad. I don't know what Verney's thinking. I'd imagine hopefully it's probably along the same lines.
Yeah, Vinnie Mac is kind of like that B Sharps album, Bigger Than Jesus. Yeah, he kind of thinks that he can just rip up the rule book. It's hilarious. Like, he fights God in a tag match, and now he basically goes against everything like that's going on in the rest of the world. Actually, it's nuts. Like, I don't know, is he thinking, like, it's obviously networks of subscriptions and whoever subscribed already. It's not pay-per-view buys anymore, so it's hard to make sense of why exactly he's going ahead with it. If it went ahead, I don't know, if they switched SummerSlam, if they did Mania as SummerSlam or something this year, They'd still get 60,000 or 70,000. They still get all the revenue. You still get fan access and everything that goes with it. It doesn't make sense that they have a captive audience this weekend, all right, because there's nothing else on. But I don't know. Sure, like people will be snoozing halfway through the card anyway if they do tune in, because it's ridiculous at length. I know, Will, you were there in 18 where the card went on quite long as well, and it drags on. But there's no way people are going to stay tuned in, and I just don't think there's any appetite there for it at the moment.
And especially like if it's 2 nights, like if the first night is crap, then your casual viewer isn't going to tune in, especially because they're giving away a lot of free subscriptions at the moment. This isn't going to be a massive selling point or a massive hook for the network that I think they think it might be. They're going to have a lot of people tuning in for atmosphereless first night that might have some fairly decent matches, but in front of nobody. It'd be like watching a 1990 AWA card. And then you've got a second night that might pass off just like a wet fart where nobody really cares. And it's all done putting the health and safety of their performers at risk. I know a lot of them, Becky Lynch, who played at the top of the show there, has come out and she says, she's been very diplomatic about it all. She's a company person. She's right to be, they're paying her wages, but she says that they're taking enough precautions and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, they're not. They've got 2 people who are on top of each other, pretending to beat the crap out of one another in an enclosed, confined space. It's not safe. And it shouldn't be happening. And the fact that they spread it out over 2 nights just makes that spectre even worse.
And just from a spectacle point of view as well, boys, like what do we know about, like what's WrestleMania renowned for? The entrances, the razzmatazz, everything that goes with it. Like that's just not going to be there. And to be fair, they've done the empty arena like shows, TV tapings really badly so far. Whereas I think AEW, in fairness to them, have went about it very well. And there's still an atmosphere. There's still wrestlers in the audience at least. I just don't see how they're going to rectify any problems they've had over the last couple of weeks. It could be a disaster, really.
How you can make a WrestleMania look and sound worse than one of those TNA cards that they had at the Manhattan Center about 5-6 years ago. I mean, it's quite an achievement, but they're going to manage it. Fair play to them for that.
Stealing a joke from Matthew from Botchamania this week as well. He said maybe this is why Austin Theory has been put onto the card. He's used to wrestling in front of no crowds in Evolve, which was a nice joke in fairness to him. When we look at this card, again, we've no order in terms of what's happening so far. Yeah. We have to wait until SmackDown because they're at the moment selling a match which won't happen, and they've already recorded what's going to happen even without Roman Reigns being involved. So we might just start with that one because we know it's not going to happen. Richie, Roman Reigns a couple of weeks ago made it fairly clear he's got, basically a compromised immune system because of his 2 battles now at this stage with leukemia. Yeah. Understandably enough, he didn't want to be there for WrestleMania, didn't want to be there for filming either. And the rumor was that Miz came in quite sick a couple of weeks ago as well, and that may well have been the final line in the sand in terms of Roman Reigns being involved. All reports are that Braun Strowman has already filmed a match against Goldberg.
Spoiler, William, come on.
Hey, spoilers are going to happen if they filmed the entire show. Sorry if you're listening to the podcast. But this seems the most bizarre of scenarios that they didn't just pull the plug last week.
Yeah, I mean, that should have been the signifier when one of the main company people and one of the main people you've built the company around over the past few years basically says, I'm not doing this because it's a major threat to my health and my well-being. When he pulled out, everybody else, you would have hoped for some kind of level of solidarity as well. I know it's like unionization and all that kind of stuff around Vince are dirty words, but you would have felt there would have been some kind of collective, not walkout, but approaching to Vince, just going, listen, Roman Reigns isn't fit to take part in this thing. Like, it could kill him by being here. I genuinely think you're just compromising all of our healths by this thing continuing, by the company continuing. Now, there's rumors today that obviously they have stuff in the can, but there's rumors that they might actually take some time off because they won't be allowed to film because there's a stay-at-home order in Florida at the moment. It would make sense if they just did. Just park it. You're not... Whatever PR battle they think they're winning, whatever battle for hearts and minds and for the casual viewer, and whatever sense, I heard Triple H again saying to Helwani that we're giving the world entertainment when it probably needs it most. It's not the right kind of entertainment. It's entertainment with a caveat, and with a couple of them. One of them being that this will be better in front of a crowd, and the other caveat is this shouldn't be happening at all because it isn't safe to the people who are involved.
What do you reckon, Mick? I mean, this seems a bit strange that Roman Reigns is going to be promoted right up until less than 48 hours before this match was meant to headline on Sunday. Like, effectively, it feels a little bit scummy that they're actually promoting a match which they've known for 2 weeks won't be happening.
Yeah, and it's scummy enough already without being smart, the whole effect that it's actually happening when most people think it shouldn't be happening. Yeah, it's a crazy scenario. listen, I was absolutely disgusted when Wyatt lost the title. I thought it was an absolute, like, just a disaster. Given from his position, I've been waiting for him to, you know, have that lead spot for a couple of years. He lost every major feud he had before that before he was repackaged, and I just thought they'd give a good run, and they've gone back to the old. I don't know if it's tried and tested or what it is at this stage, but they've gone back to that, and I don't know, maybe in a way they deserve what they're getting now. Like, there's a title match, and they're building it as one thing. It's going to be, if it is Strowman, which they're saying, like, that's going to be absolutely awful. It's going to be awful. It's going to be I don't know, it's going to be so stiff. There's going to be a couple of horrible moves in it where you think that probably someone's after getting a concussion after a botched jackhammer or a botched spear. I think everything about that match is absolutely horrible at the moment.
I can't envisage that. I know it's not going to be a technical masterclass with the two of them regardless, but when you factor in that Goldberg's last match with a big man was what, the Saudi Arabia match with the Undertaker, and he found it hard to do anything with Taker. And I know Taker's got his own, you know, physical issues. That's besides the point. But the level of cooperation that will be required, obviously, for this match, given Strowman's size, I just can't see them pulling it off. They have ample attempts to get it right. Now, bear this in mind, because much like old SmackDown main events, they're going to be cut and recut and re-edited and redone because they've had the chance to do this in front of a taped scenario. So they can present it as something that I'm sure it wasn't in the first take. But regardless, it's going to be ugly and it's going to be kind of pointless. And it'll only serve to underline how stupid a decision it was to squash Bray Wyatt as quickly as they did in Saudi Arabia.
It's intriguing as well, Richie, to see what way they go with this. I mean, the reports obviously are that Braun Strowman is going to win, and that is what's been pre-recorded. But there's always the possibility of some form of swerve here, and Goldberg holds onto the title. The only thing is, it seemed the idea with Goldberg was come in, do a match in front of a big crowd for big money, go to WrestleMania, wrestle, and hand over the title. Not too dissimilar to his run a couple of years back, where he came in, you know, won the match, and then basically was there to hand it over to Brock Lesnar. It would seem very unlikely that they keep this strap on Goldberg the far side of whatever break might be coming up.
I think they can do, which is the bizarre thing about it, because they've got time to play with here. It's not as if they're asking them to come back and do, 14 Mondays in a row and try and get them as far as Backlash and beyond. Like, they have actually time to play with here, and they could keep the belt on him. And it could be a great heat generator from that aspect alone, whereby you've got this champion that absolutely nobody wants. Now, it's the wrong kind of heat, because you're not actually having them pitted against anybody or doing anybody wrong. You're just having somebody that people don't want in the picture. But they do have time to play with. I don't think it'd be a complete disaster if he beats Braun Strowman, but it would speak highly to where Braun Strowman is, that he's a fill-in main eventer here, and he could well be beaten at the end of this one. And if he does win the championship, then it's just like completely pointless, because it's come in a setting that doesn't befit him, doesn't befit what the championship should be, and what a feud with Goldberg should be at this day and age as well.
Yeah, just a quick one, boys, for the two-y. Is there any sense in the train of thought that, given the way things are at the moment and the possibility maybe that they won't be let work in Florida, that they would actually take a break for maybe a month to 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, and ride out this kind of storm and give a chance and give some time to repackage the whole product? Is that a runner at all, do you think?
Yeah, I think they've been crying out for a break for a long time. I think Vince has always resisted the idea of having an off season, even up to the point that they've ran live shows quite close to Christmas, even in years gone by, when there seemed to be no point, when the audience was even lost in those weeks. I think this might be the chance to possibly force his hand. He is stubborn as a mountain goat, though. I think the idea of repackaging the entire program is probably optimistic, but I think for the wrestlers to let maybe things heal up, and maybe even just to create a bit of a buzz about the product again, taking a month or two off might be no harm. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, they should do it. They won't. It was like our old boy Robert on Twitter said last night, like, this company just refuses to learn, and that's the case. They have the perfect opportunity to sit back, to listen to people, to listen to what people want from the product, to assess what's in front of them as regards to their own talent, to let some of their talent heal up, and to get everybody at 100% and raring and good to go again once the world has essentially reset itself. But they're not going to, because again, like, the show must go on. There's no such thing as sick. They're not just adages that we've heard from Vince like time and time again over the past 3 dozen years, that's how he lives his life, and he will not be bowed by this in some way, shape, or form. I would be very, very sure that this company will continue through the coronavirus pandemic and beyond, and with people performing in the ring, and with video packages ongoing, and with people waiting around half an hour to deliver a promo like poor Becky had to do on Monday night. Like they don't learn. They won't learn, and this won't be a lesson to them at all.
Okay, I'm expecting that Braun Strowman finally gets his hands on a big belt. He's had one run with the Intercontinental. It's the only major singles title he's had. This is classic Strowman, I think, to have no build going into a feud, taking on Goldberg where it feels like there's no consequences, and that's the point he put the belt on him for Roman Reigns to win it from him in the future. Mick, what's your prediction for this one?
Just when you were talking about it there like that, and this is a perfect opportunity for Braun, you're just kind of thinking, Vinnie Mac sitting in his office going, that's good shit.
Do you know the image I got once Will started rolling there? I was like, oh God, do you know what they're going to do? I thought they're going to bring back Nicholas, aren't they? The young lad who won the tag team belt with him a couple of years ago. And he's going to get another run with the tag team. What they're going to do is build up to a match at Backlash whereby it's Nicholas and Braun against Goldberg and his young fella that he's been coming back for all these times. So it's going to be a mixed tag involving the Nippers. Go Nicholas!
Hook that into my veins. I want Nicholas to do a run in here and for Goldberg to have a reason to get his son involved in a few weeks' time whenever they do come back.
I'll go with Goldberg, Will. I'll go with Goldberg just to hold on to the strap and for Roman to take it off him whenever the thing kind of settles down.
Okay, Richie, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'd say they'll keep it on Goldberg because they can.
All right, I'm going for Braun Strowman, 2 against 1 on this one. When we talk about potential wrestling bollocks, there's huge potential for peak wrestling bollocks in this match between the Fiend and John Cena because of the fact that they can pre-record it in an empty stadium, because they can work in the whole kind of Mr. Rogers character and the Fiend in this as well. I think there's massive potential in this match if they do it right, Richie.
There is, but again, they have to do it right. It will come off like somebody who's going to have a massive hand in this match actually is Jeremy Borash, who's been a great factor in terms of pre-recording video stuff and the pre-production of WWE stuff over the last while, and since he came on board from TNA. He had a massive hand in how the Hardy stuff was handled before he left the company there and before they left the company as well. He will be key to how this one is presented because John Cena hasn't wrestled when was his last full match? It's definitely some months ago now at this stage. He definitely hasn't worked a full schedule in a while. They're going to try and make this as much about smoke and mirrors as they possibly can. And again, this will be one of the ones that will probably be just intriguing to watch, much like the whole Boneyard thing with Styles and Undertaker, which we'll get to. But I think this will be like what they wanted that Wyatt match to be at Mania a couple of years ago was it Randy Orton, where he kept having bugs and stuff appear in the ring, and that kind of nonsense is going to play a major part, I think, anyway, this weekend, whatever day happens to be.
Okay, Mick, in fairness, this story goes back about 5 years or so, where Bray Wyatt was being built up and he was at the top of the Wyatt family kind of hype at the time. People thought maybe John Cena would put him over. He gets beaten at WrestleMania. So in theory, this is a lot of build going into it. But obviously the limitations, I think I read recently John Cena didn't wrestle in the entire year of 2019. So it's been a long time since he's been in the ring. What do you reckon we're going to see here?
Yeah, I'm a big Bray mark, and it's just sickening to see him basically drop every big feud. As I said, nearly every big feud in his career, he's ended up on the short end of it, particularly in the payoff match at the end. It was interesting. I was listening to Matt Hardy the other day talking about the amount of time they spent making the Ultimate Deletion match. I think they spent the guts of a day taping. So they're going to have a similar time to get this right. Listen, it's going to be wacky, it's going to be weird, but they're going to have a lot of time to get it right. You're saying about Cena not wrestling. This kind of a match is a bit of an anomaly, really. It's the sort of chance where they're going to do loads of crazy stuff. He probably won't be resting at different stages in the match. God only knows, they could be in cars, they could be in anything at different stages. So I expect it to be interesting. It'll be a fair kind of a theatrical kind of a production, as Richie says. I'm just expecting a bit of madness, and something that'll probably. Most of the other matches are going to be in the ring, and it's going to be with a real kind of a sterile atmosphere. They have a chance to kind of do something special here, and if you're going to remember anything from this Mania, it's probably going to be something like this or the Boneyard match. So hopefully they'll get it right.
Yeah, to be honest, Mick, I'm kind of with you on this one. I'm probably not as much of a mark for Bray Wyatt as you are, but the last 18 months, the most interesting thing in the entire product in WWE was the Firefly Funhouse and Bray himself. And then everything seemed nicely set up going into Saudi Arabia. He gets his win over Goldberg, and then he goes on to face John Cena. It seemed very clear that Cena, even at that point, was going to be the opponent. Did this match need the belt, or is the bigger damage the fact that Bray was basically killed in a few minutes by Goldberg?
Yeah, that's the big problem for me. And like I would assume he's gonna go over Cena. It's a disaster if he does.
He has to.
Yeah, he has to. Like, because if not, it's another Mania loss. Apart from the Orton match, I think there's probably his only Mania win off the top of my head anyway. So he has to go over. But he's still like, how are they going to work it so that he gets back near the title picture again? Is he going to be one of these kind of characters that it's just going to be these type of matches, big, and it doesn't need to be around the title picture? When they put the title on him, they should have kept the title on him for a sustained period of time, probably through Mania and the whole way through the summer, I would have said. The only good scenario to come out of this is for it to be a really interesting, kind of bizarre, wacky match where he goes over Cena, and I'm praying he does.
Richie, it's often a trinket when it comes to the actual belt, but I think the belt could have added a lot to the story here. You give the idea that the Fiend doesn't want to give it up, and Cena is chasing that record at the moment.
Yeah, it's a weird one. The Fiend character reminds me of the basically the skeleton of Mankind in around 96, 97 when he was first brought in, and he was this mad, crazy guy who could take all these bumps and could be a thorn in the side for the big, nasty, face as it was at the time with the Undertaker, or indeed to Shawn Michaels. But what got Mankind over to a main event level was Mick Foley, because his personality was allowed to come out, the fans warmed to that, yada, yada, yada. I don't think the same essence is there with Bray Wyatt. I don't think Wyndham Rotunda is the same kind of character that the fans could warm to, whereby they see beyond that and through the character a little bit and allow that to develop and allow him to become somebody that they want to see. Unfortunately, with this kind of gimmick, unless they tinker it a lot and manage to play with it, mold it in different ways down the line, he's going to be stuck in these kind of wacky matches, as Mick says, whereby it's not necessarily a throwaway, but it's a little bit of a spectacle, it's a little bit of a showpiece, and he's not going to be a world title contender, because if he's going to be a world title contender, he needs to be what we saw before. He needs to be unkillable, and you need to have matches end because they can't be ended. And then with that is, if you do eventually squash him like they did with Goldberg, completely kills that mystique. Complete stone dead. It's gone, and there's very little rebuilding it, and there's a lot of work to do if you want to rebuild something like that. It doesn't happen overnight. It would take an arc of a year or maybe more, and a lot of very careful storytelling to do that. But the belt isn't necessary for a match like this, and especially with the amount of kind of bollocksology and wacky nature that there's going to be to it.
Well, it's interesting, maybe a slight amount of karma that the belt moved to try and create another match, and now that match is absolutely ruined by circumstance as well. Some of the other title matches, it feels like there's 64 belts on the line over the 2 days. There are, yeah. I think officially it's 8, but we go towards the first of the women's title matches. Mick, your take on Rhea Ripley against Charlotte Flair then? Like Charlotte Flair obviously dropping back down to NXT because they've positioned Rhea Ripley as someone who is a genuine contender and worth having a match against her. It's interesting to see NXT actually get a place on the main card here. Yeah,
it's deadly, really, to be honest with you, because she's kind of done it all the last couple of years, and it's given a chance to build another star, in fairness. And but that means part of that, they're obviously going to have a brilliant match. But as I was reading, someone had it on Twitter the other day, all this different kind of psychology of a match, and Charlotte Flair wins. And it's just like, that's usually nearly always what happens. If she were to put her over, would she put her over on Mania? It's hard to see. But at least Rhea Ripley's character will develop an awful lot if she has. She invariably probably will have a very good match, because Charlotte's class, in fairness, and she always delivers to 3.5 to 4 stars in most matches. Hopefully she'll build another star. It's hard to see past Charlotte winning in my head, because it's WrestleMania and Vince just seems to have this thing where she can't be beaten, really.
Yeah, Richie, we were talking about this last week on the NXT review as well. They've set up NXT quite nicely. There's kind of 10 people currently in contention to try and win the women's title. Eventually it's going to be whittled down to 6 in advance of that ladder match next week, and then contender, or at least one number 1 contender, should come out of that taping next week to face either Rhea Ripley or Charlotte Flair before the end of this month. So it is setting up quite nicely. It would be quite weird though, wouldn't it, if Charlotte Flair was carrying the NXT title into an empty performance center at the end of April to defend it?
I don't think so. I think that'd be a nice little frisson, but I don't know if that necessarily will happen. As Mick says there, it's how they execute this one is actually really going to be interesting. And if it does end up being straight 1, 2, 3, clean pin, middle ring for Charlotte, I think there's going to be a lot of blowback for that, especially because they've pushed Rhea Ripley to a position that I think is probably a year too soon for her. They could have established her as being the dominant force in NXT, like they did with Asuka, like they did with Shayna Baszler. They could have established her as being the woman in that division for a year and built it around her and had people bounce off her for a while. Like, I realize that they're probably making way for somebody like Io Shirai to actually take over reigning that division, and that's fair enough. But if they are going to have her lose on the weekend, then it has to be something along the lines of Austin Brett at Mania 13, whereby she's just beaten to an absolute bloody pulp and doesn't give up, and like it has to be shown to be this strong superhero that, again, like you mentioned with Bray Wyatt, that you can't put away, that you have to keep strong and still able to build her from there, still able to build her from a defeat. Because if they don't, like, they have cut the legs from under her pretty much from the jump here, and that'd be I don't know. It'd be terrible. I'm still have to be 100% sold on Rhea Ripley. I think there's other people in that division that are probably better placed than her to go on and take that kind of position. But the way they have positioned her, they're setting her up really, really nicely. They just need to be very careful that they don't cut the legs from under her at what should have been the biggest stage of the year.
Yeah, realistically, Mick, since Survivor Series, going right through the Royal Rumble and up until now, there has been a very clear narrative of Rhea Ripley is pretty much unstoppable at the moment. If she does lose this, is it going to hurt her character quite a bit?
Oh yeah, we've seen this before a fair bit, to be fair. Particularly when it comes to, like, would say back in the day, someone even coming up against Triple H, and Charlotte Flair is almost like the Triple H kind of character now, where whether it's from The Office, obviously, but she seems to be the one that can often kill off some characters. So yeah, I just hope, as Richie said, they don't take the legs from underneath her. They have an awful tendency to do it. It's going to have to be a creative finish that keeps her strong. That's providing that she takes the loss, but it's going to have to be a strong finish that kind of keeps her over and doesn't hurt her kind of momentum. Whether saying that, you could see her tapping out. You could see her tapping out. I could. Nothing is beyond, like, and that would just destroy her completely.
We'll switch then from that title match to the Raw Women's Championship match, which is effectively a very similar story. Shayna Baszler has got too big for NXT. She's broken out into Raw. They decided to turn her into a mini vampire. And then after that, it appears Becky Lynch has a reason to take her on because she's bitten her. And then Shayna Baszler goes on to win Elimination Chamber. For anyone who's listening to this in the audio round, this is actually what happened a few weeks ago. She beats everyone in the Elimination Chamber after pretty much dominating the Rumble before Rhea Ripley wins it. Shayna Baszler is set up as the woman, Richie, to take the title away from Becky Lynch. And I think Becky Lynch desperately needs to part with that title to make her interesting again.
Yeah, I think she does. She needs to chase something. Again, what I thought was unfortunate on Monday night is that she can basically, if the WWE was a normal workplace, she could sue them for putting her in danger, because essentially she waited around a half an hour on the ramp when she didn't need to be there, to only end up being beaten up to a bloody pulp by Shayna Baszler again, because she came out, she cut a promo, and then she said, let's have a look back at how I won the championship last year with my terrible hair, beating Ronda Rousey in questionable circumstances, and Charlotte Flair, oddly enough, at MetLife Stadium. And then half an hour later, the match ends. Becky's still in the same position. And then Baszler comes out and annihilates her and does a really good job of beating the crap out of her, it has to be said. Like the bump that Becky took into the side of the announce table and then back onto the floor, like, she sold that really well, and I think it was really well done by Baszler to make her look like an absolute ass kicker. I was going to say ass kicker. But yeah, Baszler needs to win, and I don't want to say in a convincing style, but she needs to make it look like there hasn't been any fuckery going on here. And if she does win it, it will give Becky something to chase, and if it gives Becky something to chase, the fire hasn't gone out with her and her reactions. And even if you look on social media and stuff like metrics and views and all that kind of, and searches, like, she's still very much, I think, almost the person in that company at the moment. It just, like, this would get a bellows to the fire again and make her not relevant, but it would add a little bit of extra something to her again. I think it'd be interesting. I think Baszler should win. I think Baszler will win, and we're set for a decent feud. My only fear is that the match might stink the joint out, because we saw that triple threat that involved the two of them late last year, and nobody was happy with it. I don't think the audience were. I don't think the performers were. Vince apparently wasn't either. When they all went backstage, it stunk the joint out when it was a main event, and it really should have been in a position to put the three of them over. That's the only hope, is that they've worked out those kinks and they can actually build some chemistry together where they can have a good match. And who knows, maybe a certain Miss Rousey might walk back in the door come May or June time.
Yeah, just on something you said there, Will, like, remember when The Rock was chasing the title in 2000? He got the title at Backlash when Austin came back. It was, a brilliant moment. The crowd went absolutely wild. And then they took it off him 3 weeks later. It's almost like, maybe with Becky as well, the chase would be more interesting than, the actual end point. So to have her scratching and clawing again and chasing, I think would be brilliant.
Yeah, I still maintain putting Lacey Evans in a program with her directly after she won at WrestleMania was probably the killer in terms of her actual push. They should have had Asuka against her, as opposed to having Asuka doing very little over the last year. Mick, the Ronda Rousey point's an interesting one, because widespread reports today that Rousey is back in conversations about extending her contract. She pretty much sat out year 2 of 3, where she said she was going to have a family after WrestleMania last year at 35, but it looks like she might push on for another 1-year contract to 2022. Given they've mentioned her in the build-up to this, given that they edited the finish effectively that they showed on Raw on Monday night as well, to make Rousey look particularly strong, I wonder whether Rousey could actually even get involved in the match this weekend.
Yeah, she possibly could. It's funny, the parallels between her MMA career, where she took, we'll say, a couple of bad defeats and then kind of got her ball and ran. They could almost paint that same story in WWE. She took her first defeat and she ran. Maybe it's a simple way of kind of painting the story, but it would, if she was to get involved, probably maybe screw Becky to some extent. It would, that would set a lightning rod off again in that division. It'd be class.
Oh, yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great. That would put a ton of heat behind both her and Baszler, and it would be fantastic. It would, because I don't think Ronda can come back in as the happy, smiley person if she is going to come back in, because, like, I found it really poignant actually. I watched that WWE was it 365 where they followed her year through her first year, or only year through the WWE, and at the end of it, she was adamant that she was going to have a family, and to see the further down the line we're a year removed and there's still no movement on that, like, it's a really delicate thing to try and handle, because it's been quite public in that regard. So in terms of you took your ball and you went home, or you took your defeat and you went off crying for a year, kind of would need to be a little bit careful of that, because I think everybody's kind of cognizant of her situation, and that needs to be handled a bit sensitively. But if she does come back, and if she is a factor in Baszler beating her, like, that's money right there. That really, really is.
Okay.
Just on what you said as well, you could see Becky cutting a promo on her for what you just said, Richie, and it's very deep to the bone.
No. I would like to distance myself right now from the remarks of one Michael Verney.
Right, before we go into the break, we still have 12 more matches to look forward to, and a couple of more.
Christ, seriously?
Yeah. Before we go into the break, to give Richie a chance to get his sanity back, how are you predicting this one, Mick?
Baszler, hopefully, with some sort of kind of a kooky finish to kind of set a lot of things up over the next couple of months.
Richie, go on.
Yeah, I'd go along with Mick there. I think it's going to be Baszler, and I think there will be some kind of added, as Mr. Chris Eubanks might say, a little bit of added spice to that. So yeah, there'll be little something to make us kind of keep going throughout the late spring, early summer.
All right, we're going to take a very short break. We're going to get some oranges and a banana here at halftime, and we'll be back after some classic wrestling ads to look forward to Brock Lesnar against Drew McIntyre.
Pathetic! You call yourself a jackpot? I've seen bigger dimes. So thought of increasing your jackpot potential, get you pumped? Maybe it's time you jack up your jackpot with Mega Millions. Woo! That's what I'm talking about. If you want to go from puny jackpots to huge ones, jack them up with Mega Millions for the Tennessee Lottery. Woo! Like this. Woo! No, like this. Woo! Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday comes again.
毎日
Sunday,
毎
Monday,
日
Tuesday,
日立の
Wednesday,
細長
Thursday,
は
Thursday,
静
Friday,
か
Saturday,
サラサラ
Sunday comes again.
綺麗な空気体には細長が気持ちいいんです日立のビッグフローウェルネス
日立ふれあい感謝デー日立のお店
Hi, you're very welcome back from the break. Some classic ads there from two of the all-time GOATs, both Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan. It's time for us to take a look at the rest of the Mania 36 cards before we look at some of our potential WrestleMania dream matches and back at some of our favourite matches in the history of WrestleMania as well. On Off the Top Rope this week, we've got Michael Verney from the Irish Independent and Richie McCormack from The Office here in Off the Ball as well, all working remotely over Skype at the moment to bring you this podcast. We've already been talking about the first four matches on the card. Mammoth 12 to get through, but probably the only one that really has any kind of stakes on this one, Mick, is the WWE Championship title. Last year it was Brock Lesnar who was holding on to the Universal title. Here he is now with the WWE title this time around. We all expect Drew McIntyre has been lined up for quite some time to beat him. Would it be totally unfair, because we talked about this, Richie and I, last week, if Drew McIntyre is to have his WrestleMania moment in front of empty chairs?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking myself too, to be honest with you. They actually, I would like bemoan the way they build kind of stories and rivalries at times. But to be fair, they built this really well in the course of about 35, 40 minutes at the night of the Royal Rumble. I thought it was brilliant because Brock was displayed yet again as this absolute monster, and then McIntyre comes in, and all of a sudden it's like bang, geez, you have your WrestleMania probably main event there if you wanted, and it's been built very well even since then. And like, there's no such thing as a WrestleMania moment in front of nobody. Like, I don't know. Does the result or the potential result change because of that, and his moment happens down the line, or do you stay with plans as is? It's kind of a tricky one. I'd imagine that they would stick with plans as is if McIntyre was to go over and get his big moment. If that was the plan, I'd imagine they probably would stay to that plan. But it's not going to be the same it's just not going to be the same. It's not going to be that same spectacle. It's not going to be like, it's the first one that comes to mind. Sorry now, but like the Benoit moment at the end of Mania or something like that. You're not going to have one of those. Do you know what I mean? Apologies.
Straight to the murder suicide there. Very nice one, yeah.
But it's just that's kind of the ones. Even Becky's one last year, at the end of last year, even though that didn't exactly go how I would have planned. It wasn't as good as it should have been. But it's going to be weird if his moment is in front of an empty arena. Yeah, definitely.
I've just had, while you were talking there, I've just had a vision of what they could do for that, because I'm sure you've seen the promos that he's done for BT Sport, where he pretends to be off in the Highlands and doing all these strongman things of lifting boulders and tossing cabers and being involved in one-man tugs of war. That sounds very sexual.
It does.
But I have a feeling that they'll have some kind of fake setup where it's like, oh, we have cameras standing by in Drew's hometown of Lochmanshire or something like that in Scotland, and they'll have some setup whereby the whole village, because he would be from a village and not like Glasgow, everybody's watching on and cheering him on, and they'll have that on the big screen, the Titantron as it is in the Performance Centre, being his kind of coup de grace when he gets to celebrate and he sees teary-eyed scenes from back in Scotland being beamed straight into the Performance Centre a week ago as being his moment. I have a feeling they could do something really corny like that.
Yeah, I do enjoy that gamekeeper guy they're using in the BT Sport ads, but I think he probably has to stay in that universe. I don't really want to see him end up in WWE as like a manager or as some guy trying to inspire him or something. That would be entirely the wrong feel.
It's very on Jose Lothario.
Yeah.
This is random Scottish dude. Come on, Drew. I get up we are.
I think they would go absolutely full Willie on this one if he was to actually end up coming in.
I want to see him being brought to the ring by like a Limmy character. One of Limmy, saying Mr. Mulvaney can be like the Scottish version of Vince McMahon. It's like, all right, think it through. Okay, what's Drew gonna do now? Oh no, wait, he was just trying to guide him to the ring, and no, you're not in trouble. So yeah, a Limmy character to manage Drew McIntyre down the road, please.
Okay, well, Richie and I predicted this one last week. We think that Drew McIntyre has to win, Mick. In your opinion, does he have to win? And are you entirely sold on Drew McIntyre?
I'm not entirely sold on him, but like when you compare it to the first run around, it's amazing how someone can turn themselves around, turn himself into an absolute beast. Exactly what Vince wanted and got himself over. I'm not entirely sold on him, but like if he doesn't win, if he doesn't go over, I'm not sure how they could paint a picture where he would come out of it with enough credibility to maintain his kind of character development for a couple of months down the line to eventually take the title in a better situation. So he has to win. They've had time enough to be creative about it. They've had a couple of weeks now to be creative about it. And as Richie said, even I don't know whether that will happen on the Titantron, but they should have had time to be creative about making it the occasion that it should be if he does win the title.
Yeah, I'd love to see the Highlands of Scotland celebrating his win if that was to happen. Not sure how social isolation is working for them up around Loch Lomond and so on, if that were to happen, but it'd be interesting. If we were to go through every match in the detail we have, we probably would need 2 nights to do the podcast. So let's just race through.
At some stage, well.
Yeah, we'll race through the rest of the matches and just get your thoughts on what's going to happen very quickly on each of these. Richie, give you first shout. Bayley against Lacey Evans, against Naomi, against Sasha Banks, against somehow on the card Tamina, and not sure how she snuck it onto the card in the end. But I'd imagine this match has to end with Bayley against Sasha and possibly even like a double turn, or finally we get a rivalry payoff between these two.
Yeah, it has to. And I think they've been kind of subtly angling that way for a while. You would hope that those two are the last to come out of it. Although there are others in that match that kind of would deserve a little bit of a shine as well. Naomi probably being the peak of them. Like, her performance and the reaction that she got at the Rumble alone should have been enough of a G up to the office to go, listen, there's a little bit of something here. Fans are clearly behind her. People, grab onto her for some reason. She's got a lot of personality. She's got a lot of marketability about her as well. Why not go there? So they could well do that. They could well pull the trigger on Naomi, but you would think, looking at this one, it's set up, as you say, to end up being the two of them, and one or the other is going to come out of it a face.
Nick, we're finally going to probably get the payoff on this. We all expected it was going to be perhaps Sasha as a heel and Bayley as a face. It might even work out by the time that they have their rivalry, once this break probably finishes. We might even have Bayley positioned in this feud as the heel and Sasha as the chasing face, potentially. Yeah,
I just can't believe Richie missed out on the chance to say that Naomi would get her chance to glow. I
cannot.
Oh, God damn it. It's late. I've been working all day in this godforsaken room.
Yeah, this is a feud I've been waiting for ages. A big Sasha fan over the last couple of years. I've been disappointed to see everything kind of go on without her almost in the last couple of years, because they always feel she should be in that Becky Charlotte picture over the last couple of years. It'd be interesting. I like the Bayley kind of the idea of a Bayley being the heel in that kind of feud, and because it wouldn't have been the way it would have been a couple of years ago. So it has kind of flipped in the meantime. So surely this is the right time to pull the trigger on that. I hope so anyway.
Please let it be Bayley take the initiative.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. Like, the thing about it is, if it's Bayley being a heel and Sasha being a face coming out of this one, like Mick says there, it adds a little bit of something to their story arc. Their NXT bout, their takeover bout from a few years back now at this stage was just brilliant. It was built so well, and they have a chance to do something similar again here, but with, I guess, mirror images of both.
Okay. Mick, I'll give you first shout. Undertaker against AJ Styles. Very unusual build-up to this one. They've been talking about their real lives. They've been using their real names. They've been working Undertaker's wife, Michelle McCool, into the storyline as well. Richie and I kind of reckoned last week this is probably going to be an Undertaker win, and in all likelihood Michelle McCool gets involved in some way in this boneyard match, Mick.
Yeah, interesting to hear him talk about the unholy trinity and what exactly that will manifest itself as. Obviously, Michelle McCool is number 2. Who's a number 3? Or is it somebody? Is Kane coming back into the picture? Is there somebody else come back into the picture?
The ghost of Paul Bearer.
Well, if they're able to pull that out, fair play.
We said this Mania is all about post-production and pre-filming things, so why not have... You'll have Bruce Pritchard doing the voice like he used to do of Dusty back in the day, and they'll have some kind of hologram of Paul Bearer being like, yes, and that's how he'll be distracted and beaten.
interesting. The same again. They'll have a load of time to make the production value on this as good as possible. It'll have to be completely different than the Firefly kind of match. It'll be interesting to see kind of what way to go about it. Obviously the Undertaker will obviously win, but it just be see what way to go about it to keep it, make it. This is one of the chances. This match and the Firefly match are where they've got loads of time for all the matches, but this is something completely different where they can create kind of an authentic kind of an aura to it, create an atmosphere, and it'll be interesting to see how to do it. But at the end of the day, the Undertaker will win.
Yeah, I kind of hope they keep those two matches on separate nights, and I think Richie and I both last week reckon Undertaker definitely goes over AJ Styles in this one, who is a very...
I've enjoyed the build-up to it, to be honest with you. I enjoyed those promos the other night, particularly from Taker, where we got to see Mark Calloway for the first time since... that was the first time I've seen that kind of promo from him since the American Badass days, and it was good. It was genuinely... That was something that you go, Christ, if this is actually in front of people, this would be worth watching. Now, it's not going to be, but he's after giving himself enough steam behind his character that it makes you want to see him again. It makes you want to hear him talk in the microphone again, which I don't think many of us did before last week.
29 years after his first WrestleMania as well, boys. It's unreal that he's still going, still standing.
Yeah. Remarkable. He's had, I suppose his legacy has always been kind to him in terms of the wins. A few ropey matches early in his WrestleMania history, but perhaps some of his best WrestleMania matches, funnily enough, have come in the last 20 years or so. In terms of the rest of the matches, on to number 7 is the tag match, which is not going to happen. This is going to be swerved on Friday. It's the other one where The Miz is not going to be available, according to all reports. So Miz and Morrison can't defend their titles against the New Day and the Usos. So, Richie, this is one of those ones that they're going to have to basically film a segment for Friday to swerve around this. Again, it's unusual that here we are on Thursday of WrestleMania week, and we're kind of vaguely talking about a match that we've a fair idea isn't going to happen.
Yeah, and that's what makes this WrestleMania very unappealing to actually tune into, because you know that so many of the matches have either been cobbled together, and a lot of the cobbled together ones have ended up falling apart. So, yeah, again, the story of this one's going to be told on Friday, and whether or not it's actually going to be worth tuning in at the weekend for, I would doubt it. And I think it's just going to be throwaway in both instances. Write it off as best you can, and then get 3-4 minutes out of it by the time the weekend comes around.
Quite enough time in that match. Let's get to match number 8. Kevin Owens against Seth Rollins. Mick, in theory, this should be quite good. These two have had a good run on Raw over the last few weeks. Seth Rollins has totally reinvented himself as the Monday Night Messiah. Kevin Owens has been a very interesting guy to work as the mirror to him, as kind of the very likeable guy in Raw over the last while. I actually think this should go pretty high on the card on either Saturday or Sunday.
Definitely, yeah. Two of the best workers in the business. It's funny you mentioned about Goldberg's, his previous main event title match at Mania a couple of years ago. Of course, Owens was killed in the process there. He's had to rebuild himself several times, but his charisma, I just love everything about him, even from the Kevin Steen days, everything coming on into here. Massive fan. They've done really well, given the lack of audiences and everything. They've made you kind of care about this match, and I do care about it. It'll be an interesting, very hard to call who goes over. Probably Rollins, but it's one of those matches that you look forward to. There's nothing on the line, but there's a lot on the line.
What do you reckon, Richie? I mean, in a way, the winner of this probably doesn't matter, because I would imagine this feud goes well beyond WrestleMania, I should say. This isn't one of those that's a feud payoff on the night. I get the feeling this is a few months and it's still to run.
Yeah, it does, and especially because on Monday they had them team with two tag teams that they have absolutely nothing to do with. Like, we'd seen Rollins vaguely aligned with the Viking Raiders, War Raiders over the past few months, and then obviously Monday Night Messiah has had Buddy Murphy and the AOP alongside him. So to see them with Angel Garza and Andrade on one side, and then Street Profits on the other, I was like, well, this makes absolutely no sense. But then again, this is the no sense WrestleMania. But it suggests that this one's going to go on and on. I would like to see Owens get, as much as it is not really a WrestleMania moment, because I think he kind of deserves one, and I think it would add enough reason to keep this one continuing, because you'll have Rollins constantly trying to snipe at him and get at him down the line, and this is going to be their arc that goes on for, I'd say, probably 6 months, ending at SummerSlam.
Yeah, I'm okay with that running for a few more months, even if we don't have a month or two of TV. Elsewhere then, Street Profits are up against the jumbled together team of 10 days ago in Austin Theory and Angel Garza. This has been interesting, Richie, because we were watching Austin Theory in NXT last week, and he was getting pretty comfortably beaten in the end by Tyler Breeze. and here he is now on the WrestleMania main card fighting for a title.
Congratulations, pal. Everyone else is sick. You got your chance. That's kind of what this smacks of, really, a little bit, isn't it? I mean, because there's several others that they could have put in this position, but for whatever reason, Austin Theory's who they've landed on, like, he can't see anything but this being a Street Profits clinic, and they've done pretty well so far. They've obviously picked up the belts. They've put on some great performances. As we mentioned last week, we've been really impressed with what Montez Ford can do in the ring. I guess this is going to be seeing what Montez and Angel Garza can do in the space of 3-4 minutes and trying to build heat and then trying to tag the big man in to result in a Street Profits victory. It's not going to be dissimilar, I guess, from the match that we saw on Raw a week or so ago, whereby it was Garza on the other side of this one too. So again, a nothing match, a throwaway match, and if it's anything bar a Street Profits victory, I will be dying of a heart attack.
Richie's Vinnie Mac impression there, immediately I go back a match or two, but when you're thinking about the Miz not taking part, I can just see some sort of he's gonna puke or something along those lines.
He's gonna sneeze. He's gonna sneeze. He's gonna sneeze. I will battle the coronavirus.
I like as well that Brody Lee confirmed our theory from last week as well, that he was taking the piss out of Vince McMahon last week.
I know that's the I completely missed it watching the first time round. I felt such a dope for not twigging it. But yeah, fair play to Brody for taking shots at Vinny on AEW TV, which I'm sure has gone down really well in Connecticut.
I'm sure it was passed on to Vince McMahon by his secretary or his executive somewhere along the line.
Brody who?
Mick, in terms of the
I never had a Brody. Bruiser Brody? Wasn't he stabbed in Puerto Rico? Sorry, go on.
In terms of the Street Profits, Mick, I'd imagine they have to go over on this. I get the feeling this match, if we were on one night, would be your Mountain Dew, honey mustard, KFC kickoff show main event.
Keep talking, Bill. Keep talking.
Yeah, no, definitely, without a doubt. Yeah. I'd imagine they have, like, if they don't, like, they have to go over because the other team has been absolutely thrown together. So yeah, they'll win and win convincingly, I'd imagine.
Mick, I'll give you a first shout in this one. The other match that I really couldn't give fiddlers about is Alistair Black against Bobby Lashley, because again, this match has had zero build except for the fact the graphic has been thrown up to say Alistair Black versus Bobby Lashley.
Yeah, no build at all. Lashley is someone I've never been able to get into in any company. I've just never been able to get into. The only, like, I was only thinking the other day, the only good part I can remember is, you know, the Battle of the Billionaires. He's involved in that many moons ago at WrestleMania, which, like, just looking back now, looks bizarre and looks like a bit of a WrestleMania moment. But I've just never been able to buy into him. Like Alistair Black, I'd see a lot more. There's a lot more potential in him going forward, so I'd be hoping he get the W, but whether he will or not, I don't know. Being honest with you, I have no interest in that match. Being honest.
Okay. Yeah, like building up Alistair Black against a series of jobbers on the way in makes him look impressive, but doesn't make you care about the match. So who the F cares about this one? All
right. Do you care about Elias against Corbin, Richie?
No. I mean, and there's a lot, to be honest with you, I think there's a lot to like about Corbin. I think and I don't mean that in the face sense. I think in terms of his work and in terms of his portrayal of a heel, I think he actually gets it. And I think he knows how to put stuff across. But again, this has been put together by Rob Gronkowski. He is going to be all over this one, unfortunately, as the host. And like, no, I feel it does a disservice to both. I've no real time for Elias. I think he's entertaining in small doses, but I think there's a lot more to be had from Corbin down the line. But just this Gronk insertion, just no, 1,000 times no. Somebody posted up a promo of him the other day. And he has that glazed look in the eyes that Johnny Ace does when Johnny Ace was doing promos back in the day. And I can't. There's nothing there for him, and I don't see why they're shoving him down our throats.
Because he's a 6'4" muscly man, and that's exactly what Vince.
So am I, Will. So am I. Does that mean I'm going to be all over WrestleMania? No.
Mick, what do you reckon, Elias against Corbin?
I quite like Elias, and I thought he was building good momentum. It's a while back now, and I like the whole gimmick. But again, he was yet one more to add to that list of lads that have been buried. Corbin hasn't been particularly well booked either, and he's taken a lot of shit and managed to get it over. In fairness to him, I don't particularly have much interest in this match, to be honest with you, though.
Okay. Richie, it hurts my soul that Sami Zayn hasn't had a bigger career on the main roster than he's had, but he goes in holding silver as opposed to gold in terms of the new Intercontinental belt. Match against Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak have been set up as kind of the master and apprentice. Gulak, I should say, master and apprentice. While Sami Zayn has got the quirky foreign heels who are all in the one group. Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura found themselves teamed up again. They're going to be there as managers. To me, it seems kind of weird, Richie, on the face of this, that Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura are two of the best wrestlers in the company. Daniel Bryan's one of the best wrestlers in the company, but it's weird that Cesaro and Nakamura don't have an actual match.
Yeah, it's really disappointing when you consider the fanfare that Nakamura had coming into the company into NXT originally and then onwards to the main roster. I think everybody knew with a heavy heart that he would be misused on the main roster, that he wouldn't be, the office would think that if this guy can't speak English properly, he can't get over, when the guy has bags of charisma to just get over on his own and get over on his work between the ropes and, the odd word here and there. But it just, when you see matches thrown towards like Austin Theory and Miz Morrison and Lashley and stuff like that, it kind of makes you a little bit sad that the likes of Cesaro don't have a more prominent role in the company. The likes of Nakamura don't have a prominent role in the company. And that Bryan and Sami Zayn are just left to dangle in this nothing match. Like, Bryan probably has his own reasons for it. He doesn't care. He's on a contract. He's probably going to be used more as an agent going down the line, and that's fair enough. But, it's just a throwaway, and it's disappointing. That said, they'll probably make it the most entertaining throwaway we'll see all night, much like Bryan and Gulak were given free reign to do what they wanted at the last pay-per-view. Like, that was insanely good crack, and possibly one of the best matches you'll see all year, just because it was so unusual to their surroundings. So again, we could see something similar here.
My assumption, Mick, would be that eventually this is a payoff with Drew against Daniel Bryan, potentially a really good match as well. Could be a passing of the torch, potentially down the line here as well. That has to be the payoff for this ultimately. I mean, I'm guessing Bryan has to get the Intercontinental belt here. Yeah,
I'd imagine so. That it's the logical kind of move. Just what you said about, like, Cesaro, to me, Cesaro is a main eventer. Cesaro is a main eventer all over, who you look very like, by the way, Richie. I presume it's been said to you several times. Cesaro and Nakamura are both main eventers, and to see them, languishing down the bottom end of a card and not really having any part in a WrestleMania, that's what can happen when you have too much talent. Too much talent, and they don't know how to use it.
Yeah, Richie's missus is going to be delighted that she's gone out with Cesaro. Elsewhere,
married to.
My apologies. Yeah. She has put a ring on it. Last couple of matches that are left now, our last of our title matches, is again someone who I think has been badly used in Asuka, along with Kairi Sane, the Kabuki Warriors up against Alexa Bliss and Nicki Cross. They had a kind of a bit of a nothing match. Took place last week on SmackDown. The build has been kind of low-key enough on this one. I can't say I really care for the combined act of Nicki Cross and Alexa Bliss over the last year. They were also in a match, in a tag team match last year as well. Richie, how do you see this going? Kabuki Warriors defending their titles against our Scott and American connection.
Yeah, we're going to get Alexa Bliss and Nicki winning this one, I think, unless there is a split between the two of them, and that's the reason for them not winning it. So it's going to be one of two things. They actually do have their little moments and get to take the titles and be all happy clappy, or we get to see Miss Bliss kind of turn on Nicki and turn her into an absolute monster babyface, because I think there's enough good feeling towards Nicki Cross, and she comes across quite well herself, that they do have a lot of wiggle room there to actually make her into a pretty big face. But again, we'll just show how badly they've misused both Kairi Sane and Asuka, because they're both just they're money and they've got charisma like beyond their years. Like, it's just amazing to watch the two of them. They're great workers. They've got loads of charisma and they barely need to say a word to get over in front of a crowd. But again, misused by the company. Again, they've got too much talent that they don't know what to do with what they have.
Yeah, Mick, there's potential here for either of these two tag teams to split. Potentially Kairi Sane could maybe go face and could break away from Asuka. The far more likely one will probably be if Alexa Bliss and Nicki don't win, that they eventually have a split up, and maybe Nicki realises that it's probably not in her best interest to be hanging out with Alexa Bliss. How do you see the match going, though?
I'm hoping for the latter of what you said there, because you're just going to draw out the Alexa Bliss Nicki Cross thing a lot longer if they win the titles, and then the fallout will be when they lose the titles. I think they should go to the payoff in the next while. I think they should lose, split, and then build to a nice little feud. That would probably take them into the guts of the summer, I'd say. And it would be interesting. As Richie says, Nikki Cross will be built as a big baby face there. I've always had a soft spot for Alexa. I don't know what it is, apart from the fact that she's absolutely stunning. But what Richie said about Asuka is unbelievably relevant. Just because I think Vinnie Mac thinks that when you look at like Nakamura and Asuka, that obviously they're not going to be able to cut like a load of big promos in English or whatever, but they don't need to. Like Asuka's a killer. A couple of words a month would do fine. And let her do her stuff in the ring, and she doesn't really need to talk thereafter. It's sad to see the way she's been misused, and it's almost like 1 minute she's fighting Becky, or she's in a main event or a big women's match at WrestleMania. The next she's so far down the card it's not even funny.
You can kind of see the dichotomy of the company, because you've got people like clearly that was a Becky project where she knew she could get a good match out of her, like they could have a good match together. They clearly had good chemistry together, and that she could build her personally into saying that this is a woman that, you know, I've never beaten, and people would believe it, and people go, all right, yeah, actually she was. Remember for those 900 odd days she was unbeaten. Oh yeah, she's that one. Yeah, great. Because we've lost so much steam behind her over the past 2 years, really, especially since, like, she should never have lost to Charlotte at Mania a couple of years ago. Like that was just a crazy mistake. And if you're going to make her lose, at least do it in a way that builds heat, that you want to see a rematch. And then they couldn't even do that. So they completely chopped the legs out from under her, like we kind of fear that they might do with a couple of performers this weekend we mentioned earlier on. But yeah, Asuka's just been so badly misused. Like if you wanted to be a face, she's the most charming person in the world. You just have to look at her YouTube channel for that. Yeah. And if you wanted to be a killer, like she can be, and she's just gas. And Kairi's actually the same. Kairi Sane is can play the cutesy Joshi face, or she can play the kind of devious little heel. He does little sneaky things here and there, and either way you'd be like, they'll pull off their angles in the ring. And again, as Mick says there, like, I've always had a soft spot for Alexa Bliss. I don't think she's ever shamed herself in the ring. I think Nikki Cross is a really good performer. They have a decent chance to put on a good show, these four. But God knows if they're going to have the time, and God knows if there's going to be the care factor behind the match either. I don't think there will be, to be honest.
Matches 15 and 16, our last two to look forward to, are the two that have had the best and most consistent bills.
Right.
Number 15, is Otis against Dolph Ziggler. This is actually a build-up Mick Verney that's been going back to 2 weeks before Valentine's Day. They've given this a proper run. Dolph Ziggler has played the comedy heel. He has been basically manipulating things. And, you know, Mandy Rose is probably going to have to make a decision at some point during this match. I think actually they've made a big booking mistake. They should have had her as the special guest referee. And then Sonya Deville should have got involved in the match after that. And it should have been revealed that obviously she's been the one working with Dolph along the way. They probably missed a trick. But still, this potentially gives Otis a little WrestleMania moment for himself here.
Oh, it definitely does, yeah. And just what you're saying there, Will, I've often thought about, I'm in a WhatsApp group called Eat, Sleep, Wrestle, Repeat, where we chat through different things the whole time, different stories. I've often thought, like, what it would be like if they gave us the book for 6 months. You know, like, imagine, it's like, it'd be unbelievable, wouldn't it? Just like, you could try and right all the wrongs, do all these long-term storylines, like what you're saying there about they should have done this, should have not. Wouldn't you love the opportunity?
I worked with somebody back in the day who claimed to have written to Vince McMahon with a story arc. I think it was for Booker T. Nice. I might be wrong. They were like, they just like, this is back around 2002, 2003 when they just had acquired obviously all that WCW talent. And he was like, he apparently wrote to Vince McMahon with this like story arc for Booker T. And he's like, and he never wrote back to me. But then like 6 months later, my stuff was playing out exactly on the TV. And I was like, come on, you absolute liar. I think everybody has that moment where they're like, just give me that storyline and I could get these 4 performers or 5 performers over and get you 3, 4, 5, 6 different matches of pay-per-views. That would be really, really good. But yeah, I think we all have that moment where we're like, I could be in the writing team. I'm going to send them my CV. God damn it. I've wrote stories for Off the Ball. I could be that person.
I've been reading a lot of this guy recently. It's a cartoon book that Jim Cornette has done, Behind the Curtain, and I'm addicted to listen to his podcast, and his YouTube channel is absolutely outstanding. And I haven't listened to him. You actually think you actually think you know so much. You know, one of those people that you talk to about sport or whatever, and you just come away knowing a lot more, and you think, yeah, maybe I could do that. But I'd highly recommend this, by the way.
Right, I can't stand Cornette when he talks about AEW, but I will listen to him talking about most other things. I'll often get to his podcast, I'll flick past quite a bit of it, get past kind of the first 18 minutes of ads, then get to the point where he's actually talking about the wrestling from that week. And a bit like you, Mick, I think he's very interesting. I think he's a brain that's probably lost in the industry at the moment. I wonder if his incident earlier this year and the joke that he made when he was on NWA, I kind of wonder whether that's going to affect him further down the road. He's probably going to be toxic for someone to touch. But then again, I never thought we'd see Hulk Hogan back in the mainstream again after those tapes around Booker T got out. Are we expecting, Mick, that Otis wins this then and Dolph Ziggler does the job for him?
Dolph is well used to doing the job now at this stage, and I expect him to do it again. And as you said, I'd say Otis will get his WrestleMania moment. It's an interest, at least there's going to be a bit of interest in this. Like, I am interested to see how it plays out.
All right, Richie, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I think he's a really likable character, and there's wiggle room, as you mentioned with a couple of hours later on, where you can go different places with him, and hopefully that's just a kind of kick off for him this weekend. All
right, let's get to what should be the main event on Saturday or Sunday, because this has been the most absorbing of build-ups. You've got two of the best workers over the last 15 years who are going to go up against each other. You've got 12 years of history between these two, going back to around 2008, 2009 as well, when they then combined forces at that point to become Team RKO. It all splits up now, and Mick, we were saying last week, the intrigue about this build as well is that Randy Orton, from a certain point of view, is perfectly justified in everything he's done to Edge and his family over the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, he's kind of been reborn over the last 6 weeks. This has been some of the best work of his career, I would nearly say, over the last 6 weeks to 2 months, nearly since the Rumble. It's the first time I've been properly interested in him and what he's been doing in a long time. And it's almost like there was talks of, contract talks and whether possibly, I don't know how slim a possibility it was of him going to AEW or something like that. And it's all been kind of re-energized. I think it's been brilliant. And the fact that 2 months ago, none of us would have ever envisaged that Edge would be in a wrestling ring again. And they've done this really, really well. And it's one of the few matches that you're actually looking forward to. There's a fair bit, as the Hurling boys would say, there's a fair bit of intensity to it, and yeah, it would be. I know there's a buzz to it that there probably isn't with. Jesus, you could count on one hand the amount of matches that you'd be looking forward to, but this is top of the heap.
Yeah, we played a clip, Mick, at the start of Edge, and he's been very kind of intense over the last few weeks. What I think has been interesting is they had the one confrontation that happened pretty much on the first week of Raw when this confrontation started. That was enough. There was huge, back when crowds were actually going to wrestling before the COVID-19 crisis, a huge reaction from the crowd on the night when the concerto was hit on Edge. They flirted with real life a little bit with people concerned, Jesus, his neck, what if something was to happen? And then, since then, these two guys haven't had to touch each other or be near each other. You've had proxies, obviously, with Beth Phoenix and with Matt Hardy. But aside from that, I actually think part of the intrigue of this build is that we haven't seen much of Orton and Edge together. Sometimes when we go into these big matches, they're spoiled by the fact that there's promos with the two guys in the ring week on week going into it. At least this time around, we have the intrigue built a little bit.
Yeah, I love the way they've gone about it. It's kind of like when Bryan came back, and it was like he got pulverized maybe the first SmackDown after he returned. And it looked as authentic as you can get, and you're actually fearing, just because you know what he's been through in real life. You're kind of fearing for him. It wasn't maybe as much of that with Edge, but there was definitely pardon the pun, there was a fair edge to it. And with these rivalries, with these sort of rivalries, they don't need to get their hands on each other. That's the beauty of it. Remember, there was the Taz and Sabu feud in ECW. They feuded for about 2 years. And they never actually got their hands on each other. Something always happened. And when they eventually did, the place absolutely exploded. The lights came on and Sabu was there. And while it's not going to be exact same as that, you're looking forward to see them. You think they're going to rip each other's heads off. And I know it's make-believe, but that makes you believe, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, the suspension of disbelief is there with this one, because Edge's comeback was so well handled. I think I mentioned it to Will last week. We all groaned when we considered the idea that it was going to be Randy Orton and Edge with Edge's comeback match, but they've done it so well that you're actually wanting to see this match, and it's one of the few that you're wanting to see this weekend, and intrigued to see how it will turn out. I don't think anybody's disputing that Edge will get the win, but you kind of want. It's going to be one of those fast and intense and relatively safe matches to make sure that we get to see Edge further down the line, because I think he's got that contract for several appearances, and no doubt one of them will probably be in Saudi Arabia. But regardless, I think we're going to see him down the line. They're going to have this short, sharp, intense match at the weekend.
Yep, I think he's signed up for 4 matches per year over the next 3 years. He gets over $10 million for doing that as well. Not bad work if you can get it. Mick, it would let the air out of the balloon slightly though, wouldn't it, if Randy Orton was to win this? I'm guessing the logical way to go is Edge to get his win and then use the next couple of matches this year sensibly, maybe to have him feud with someone else.
Yeah, like it would make sense for him not to win with the great kind of comeback and everything to it. Orton's that well established and everything. There's absolutely no need for him to win this match. So hopefully this, well, it has happened several times before. You're hoping common sense would prevail, but you wouldn't be sure that it would. But Edge should win, yeah.
Okay, let's get away from modern wrestling, which can be hard to watch at the best of times. We'll look forward to about 5.5 hours they're predicting across the 2 shows this weekend, which might be a bit more digestible than trying to watch 6 or 7 hours of it in one night last year. We'll look maybe back at some of our favourite matches. I'll admit I'm entirely biased because I was there at the time. One of my favourite WrestleMania matches continues to be The Rock against Hulk Hogan. The in-ring action wasn't great, but it's one of those moments where you get 2 guys who are really well able to work a crowd, and they were able to flip it on the night, and that was the most interesting thing. We did a double turn about 3 minutes into the match where Hulk Hogan had the entire support of the crowd, and The Rock was booed out of the building in Toronto that night as well. It's those kind of moments that make WrestleMania. Mick, give us one of your favourite WrestleMania moments then.
I'm not going to lie to you, Will. I watched that WrestleMania 18 in Paul Cleary's house in Burr with your old friend Barry Kennedy, and we were absolutely sick that you were there. We were absolutely sick. I won't lie. That's right up there. WrestleMania moments and wrestling moments in general. It was definitely not the perfect match or anything like that. But when a crowd is that hot, it's hard beaten. WrestleMania moments for me. Probably WrestleMania 10. Probably 2 moments in the one night. The opening match between Bret and Owen Hart was it was an absolute wrestling clinic, brother versus brother. I loved everything about it. I loved Owen getting the win, him being that kind of spoiled pup and everything. But then Bret had the main event against Yokozuna, won that. The face locker room empties, carried shoulder high, and then you have the spoiled brat of a brother standing in the aisle, and he just played that role so well, and it set up the SummerSlam match and loads of matches during the summer. I actually have goose pimples even talking about it. That's one of that's up there with my favourite WrestleMania moments. Yeah,
it's a beautiful moment in that match as well. At the end of it, where you see Owen on the Titantron. Now, obviously, they use distance very cleverly. Owen is basically on camera, not that far away from Bret, but they make him look like he's actually superimposed over the entire arena because he's up on the Titantron, and that's what Bret's looking back at. So, from time to time, WWE production get it really, really right. And I thought that was a really powerful image to finish out quite late in the show as well. Richie, for you, what's right up there?
Both of the Undertaker Michaels matches I thought were absolutely superb and probably supersede what was for ages regarded as the work rate match, which was Steamboat and Savage at 3. But as regards other ones, I've always had a really soft spot for Bret and Piper at WrestleMania 8, because the card, like from top to bottom, I think was pretty crap, but I think they played that feud really well. There was even a little promo just like immediately before the match that they managed really well, and the match itself, like Piper is never somebody you regarded as would be at Bret's level in terms of bell to bell, but he was like right there for the whole thing and had enough steam behind him and made Bret look like $1 million by the end of the night. And yeah, like took a clean pin in the middle of the ring, which is something that Piper has so very rarely done throughout his career. So Piper and Bret for me at 8 is up there. The 2 Michaels ones involving Taker are right there as well. And I don't know, beyond that, I'd say probably they're my top 3.
Yeah, Mick, when it comes to the Shawn Michaels Undertaker, the series of matches that they had over the course of a couple of years, is that why we maybe hope that Undertaker actually has a big performance still left in him? I know we're getting back to 10 years ago now at this point, but when you saw how he could go in those 2 matches, I think you've always been hoping in his last few appearances that maybe we might see another Undertaker match on that level if he's fit.
Oh God, I can't see. Those matches were dragged out of him, and he was gone well beyond his peak even at that stage. Very, very wishful thinking. If anybody can do it, in fairness, AJ can probably do it. I don't know if we're going to talk about dream matches as well, but AJ, Michaels, like if you're like, they're two lads that have pulled so much out of other lads. So AJ will pull a lot out of the Undertaker. I can't see it going back to anything like those HBK matches, though, not to that level.
Yeah, Richie, I was just thinking of one that kind of stands out the year after, if we're going to talk about HBK and the way that his career finished, and it always made me disappointed he came back to wrestle in Melbourne a couple of years ago, is that HBK got pretty much an ideal send-off to his career. And like when you think back about the fact that he got to retire Flair perfectly as well a couple of years previous to that. And again, it kills me, and I try and block it out in my memory, aside from the Jay Lethal promos with Ric Flair, that Ric Flair ever ended up in TNA. It's a bit of a killer in the case of WWE couldn't have given better finishes to both Shawn Michaels and to Ric Flair, and both of them had to go on to one more match after that.
Yeah, the Michaels one, you feel that they strong-armed him into that with, they basically backed a dump truck full of cash up to his house and he wasn't made of stone. With Flair, the dump truck full of cash had disappeared from his home and he suddenly was in need of that dump truck to return, which is why he went on those awful blood and guts matches with Hogan down in Australia, and then his dreadful TNA run, the upshot of which was that I got to meet the man himself during one of those TNA shows, or before one of those TNA shows at the stadium. But yeah, like they gave such good send-offs. But as Mick mentioned there, the days of Undertaker pulling out a decent match are long, long gone, as they should be. The guy's, knocking on his 50 odd. I don't think he should be expected to put on great matches like that anymore. And the concentration should probably be on, I guess, I don't know, I'd love to see him doing what AEW are doing with Jake at the moment, which is using him as a mouthpiece to try and get somebody else and somebody younger over who he sees as being in his mold.
Yeah, potentially loads of guys who could fall into that as well. Potentially guys coming up from NXT. A rub from The Undertaker would be absolutely huge. Before we talk about dream matches, I'm going to rule WrestleMania 17 out of this, because WrestleMania 17 is on a different level to all the rest of the WrestleManias. Outside of 17, Richie, what's your favourite? It can be your favourite for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be the best, but what's your favourite overall WrestleMania?
Overall WrestleMania. Oh, I don't know. Something about 12 I've always liked it, despite the fact that the Piper Goldust match, a lot of that is questionable. I think I was excited at the time to see Warrior return. That excitement was misplaced. But the Michaels Hart match was brilliant at that time. Really enjoyed 12. I enjoyed 18. There was a decent run in the early 20s or so once they went back to stadiums. I think it was 22, wasn't it? I don't know. I'd still go back to one of the earlier ones. I'd still go back to something like 3, because there was that many good matches on there. And there was so many little comedic throwaways as well, like King Kong Bundy squashing a midget. Yeah. Like that kind of stuff is gold to me, and I love that kind of stuff. But 8 is the kind of missed opportunity for me, whereby it should have been Hogan and Flair, and they second guessed themselves really, really badly. Flair and Macho ended up having a pretty decent match, to be fair. But to be fair to Flair, as Heenan said in the Rumble. But yeah, there was a missed opportunity. That one was 8.
Yeah, I still have a fondness for WrestleMania 3. You kind of stole my answer there. I always remember having a video at home which had Steamboat against Macho Man, and for some reason it always kind of is etched into my brain. Still a really good match that holds up on rewatch now at this stage, even though probably both men were going a little bit past their peak at the time. For you, Mick, where do you fall in terms of WrestleMania you particularly love?
There's kind of a selective memory comes into it because the bits you tend to forget the bad bits and remember the good bits. Like 10 had the brother versus brother, the ladder match, and the brilliant payoff in the main event. So that would be up there for me. WrestleMania 30 had the Bryan story at the start and at the finish. And while it might have been a bit mad or whatever, the streak finishing is still up there with like jaw on the floor job, so that kind of 30 had a lot for me as well. Like I still can't get over it. I watched the reaction to it online the other day again, and people just losing their shit completely. So if you're talking about kind of WrestleMania moments and things like that, 30 as one of the most recent ones, and 10 as a kid growing up, I would have always had been a massive fan of.
Okay.
19 is underrated before we move off on that as well, because you had the influx of WCW guys and a lot of really good matches on there. Like Michaels and Jericho isn't spoken about nearly enough as it should be in terms of great WrestleMania matches. If Angle and Brock hadn't ended with the really badly botched shooting star press, that match would be talked about as being particularly great as well. And there were others peppered through that card too that were just fantastic. It was it was like lively. It was back in front of the stadium as well. It was an unusual setting and safe go. I really enjoyed 19.
Okay, dream matches, Mick. You've already kind of hinted at AJ against HBK. I think a lot of people would love to see HBK against Adam Cole if you could get HBK back to his prime again as well. Any other potential dream matches that stand out for you?
Yeah, Richie stole the main one I had. Like, you talk about dream matches that could happen, and then there's dream match that should have happened. Like, Flair and Hogan was the obvious WrestleMania 8 main event, and they just botched it completely because apparently they weren't drawing that much in some house shows that they were doing in the build-up to it or something like that, so they changed the plans completely. That definitely should have happened. And then obviously Ted Turner and the boys kind of got the job done out of that 2 years later and kind of stole Vinny's kind of thunder. Just there's two off the top of my head then. A peak Austin versus a peak Goldberg, which we were denied. You know, the two big icons of the late 90s. When Goldberg jumped over, Austin was as good as finished. And the other one is kind of the two kind of mythical characters, Sting versus Undertaker, which I believe was it was kind of in the pipeline years ago for WrestleMania and fell through. I was listening to something yesterday and they said that, but that's the one that kind of got away. That would have just been unbelievable.
Yeah, it always kills me a bit that Sting got hit with the golden shovel of Triple H in that horrible match which had DX and the NWO involved and whatever else, and it was on in the daylight in the WrestleMania in California a few years ago, which seemed just wrong for Sting to have his first WrestleMania match.
Sting's hair just ended up exposing this really bad bald spot at top as well, while the rest of his hair was like really wiry and sticking up. It wasn't a really gratifying WrestleMania moment, I'd imagine, for Mr. Steve Borden.
Yeah, it kind of looked like Big Ernie McCracken in Kingpin.
That's exactly what he looked like. I'm Big Sting. I'm finally above the law.
Richie, give us some dream match suggestions there.
In terms of bell to bell, I would love to have seen, and this is like peak era of both, to say they're both like, you know, just in their early 30s. Michaels and Jushin Liger would have been just like bell to bell, absolute clinic. Same Bret Hart and Daniel Bryan would have been like amazing. The two of those would have been great. But for actual, it seems really obvious, but it's not something that we got. I think a peak, like I'm talking about like 85, 86, Four Horsemen Flair against Austin, for what they could have pulled out on the microphone in the build up to that match would have been absolute magic. Like I genuinely think the two of them going after each other and like Four Horsemen beating the crap out of Austin and then heading into Mania. It's just the two of them one-on-one, and they get to put on a wrestling clinic when the two of them weren't, you know, criminally injured and all this kind of stuff. That would have been just gold. And unfortunately, the point of the career where they finally met wasn't necessarily a good place for either of them. But that in like Austin in, say, late 96, early 97, and Flair from about 85, 86 together would have just been money, absolute money.
Psychology would have been absolutely off the charts in that one. It's one of those, well, Richie, I think when you look back at a lot of Ric Flair's time in WWE, and it is kind of unusual, like he was in between basically a standoff when he initially left the NWA to make his way over to WWE, and then didn't really fancy it after his booking wasn't exactly too hot, and he made his way back down to Georgia again. But despite the fact that they put him in the kind of co-main event of WrestleMania with Savage, quite aside from that, they probably didn't use a guy all that well, who I guess, once again, Vince probably looked at it and said, Ric Flair is not my creation. This is a guy from a different territory that I'm bringing in.
I heard an interesting one there. Oh God, whose podcast was I listening to? Somebody's last week. I don't know if it was JR, or if it was something in between the sheets. But no, it was Pritchard. Where basically he says that Flair makes more money now on appearances based on the character that he portrayed in WWE from what was late 2001 onwards than he would have ever done if it was just based off his NWA WCW run, just because he was in front of more eyeballs, like regardless of the work that he did. It's just a really interesting theory that period of his life although artistically not the best, and we all view the kind of early 80s promos and him shouting and hollering about his Rolex watch and his $4,000 suits and all this kind of stuff, that basically what's made it for him is his WWE run, which nobody regards as being all that great. There were some decent matches peppered in there now and again. But yeah, it's a strange one. And again, I don't think Vince saw him as, it wasn't that he was his creation. It's that he genuinely wasn't that well known outside of the Crockett kind of territories and the traditional Southern territories of WCW. So you kind of had to build him up as being, like, people didn't believe, like, without wanting to get on, because I've literally got to go in 5 minutes. They were talking about in the build up to, like, in around WrestleMania 4, where like Hogan's being portrayed as this like monster who doesn't even take bumps for giants, whereas like Flair's getting beaten up as a heel champion by Ricky Morton on TV, and you're kind of going, well, why would I believe him as champion when I can just believe in this superhero as champion, when the two of them are in a direct competition? So it's really interesting divergence of paths, I think, in the mid 80s when cable actually took hold.
Mick, I'll give you a final word going into this weekend, because Richie mentioned he used to go off and read a bulletin on Off the Ball in a few moments' time. Are you actually looking forward to WrestleMania 36 across 2 different nights?
No, but just thinking, I have low expectations. I'll go in with very little optimism, and hopefully it will just blow all my expectations away. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. I've had big expectations before and been seriously let down. So hopefully it will exceed my expectations. That's the hope on it.
That's life, Mick. That's just life in general.
Well, we finally have a name for this podcast this week on Off the Top Rope. It will be called Low Expectations when I finally get the audio saved. It has been Richie McCormack. It has been Mick Verney. We've been looking forward to WrestleMania 36 and looking back at some of our favourite WrestleMania moments as well. We'll be back for our sins early next week to do a review of WrestleMania 36. A nice, what was it, a show too big for one night, I think is the strapline they're using officially, as opposed to Low Expectations. Mick Verney, Richie, thanks a million for talking to us.
Cheers, gents.
Well, cheers, lads.